I'm the CEO of True SK Consultant, an educational consulting company dedicated to reforming urban schools and school districts across America. I started my company because I wanted to help educators, principals, school districts think about how they can be innovative in terms of changing school culture, improving instructional programs within their school, and really connecting with young people in a real meaningful manner. The core of True SK Consultants is teaching reading uniquely to reverse underperformance. It's based upon my innovative approaches to reach young people, to professionally develop staff, to create community within schools, and to improve culture. So we teach reading uniquely. My uniquely happens to be hip hop. So how do we integrate hip hop into the whole school reform process and use it as a mechanism, like I said before, to professionally develop staff, to engage young people, to connect with them so that they will rise to the level of academic achievement that we expect of them. We've helped hundreds of people, 20 to 25 schools in New York City and throughout the country. Education is the passport to freedom, as Malcolm X said. We have to be able to change the reality within our schools so that our children, and when I talk about our children, I'm talking about specifically Black and brown children, have an opportunity to have a better way of life. And that happens through education. So if we have people who are educated, and we have people who are learning about other people and what they've contributed to the world, then we have a better harmony in our society. The Classroom Hip Hop 101 is an innovative show that specifically addresses issues in education that prevent our young people from learning. So my show is about addressing implicit bias, addressing and confronting anti-Black racism, working towards creating avenues and platforms that will allow our educators to be better, our students to be better, for our students to achieve, but we do it in a way where it's fun, it's engaging, it's exciting. So we add the hip hop element to it. We have the DJ, we have, sometimes freestyles, we have new artist spotlight. We mix it up because we want to make education sexy in the mind of young people and get educators to understand that this is how you grab a young person's mind and bring them into the learning process. The guests that we've had on our show, we have had hip hop artists like Roxanne Shante. We've had hip hop artists like Styles P, DMC, My Song. All these people who are doing things in the community that are impactful and that are making a difference. We've had Principal George Patterson, who started off as a principal who's now the executive director of My Brother's Keeper for the New York City Department of Education. Principal Jamal Bowman, who's now soon to be Congressman Jamal Bowman, who left the educational space and went into politics. I've been doing this show as a labor of love for the last 3 years. I was inspired by watching Nas' Time is Illmatic and saying to myself, how did the teachers in that school not see the genius of this bright man? What made him want to drop out of school before even entering into a high school? I couldn't understand that. And I realized that we're missing something. There's a disconnect. And if Nas made it in spite of what happened in his schooling, if 50 made it in spite of what happened in his schooling, if Jay-Z made it in spite of what happened in his schooling, each one of these people, all dropouts. So something's happening, something is wrong. And so I started this 3 years ago, and since that time, we've been able to reach thousands of people. I get letters, I get messages in my email about how the teachers are learning different tools by watching the show. So I feel like this show can be something that can be watched throughout America, and that solutions will come out of this show because we're creating an environment where it's safe to share and it's safe to have courageous conversations about what's happening in school so that we can move the needle forward on behalf of our children.
We turn to Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He is on the front lines here in the U.S. response to the coronavirus outbreak. Dr. Fauci, good morning. It's good to have your time, sir.
Good morning.
First of all, I mean, as we know, the World Health Organization just declared this a global health emergency.
So the parent-teacher check-in live stream is actually the outgrowth of the Classroom Hip Hop 101. You know, I was doing my shows every month and the pandemic hit and everything shut down, so we couldn't go into the studio anymore. I was on hiatus like everyone else. I started to hear the stories about what was taking place with the remote learning. Horror stories. Students who were not seeing their teachers and feeling withdrawn by that. Teachers who were heartbroken because they couldn't connect with their students. Teachers trying to figure out how to teach on the new learning platforms like Zoom and Google Classroom. Students saying that they only would see work posted and never hear from their teachers. Work would just be uploaded. No more human connection. People were losing loved ones. Teachers were losing loved ones. I personally lost 2 to 3 former teachers who I knew that were very dear to me. Students were losing grandparents and parents. There was an economic impact. There was a health impact. There was a late response to making sure that the information got to Black and brown communities. All of these things were happening and people were depressed. And I could not sit around and just do nothing. How can we provide support to parents and teachers? So in the parent-teacher check-in, it was just that. If you wanted to come in and yell, yell. If you wanted to come in and scream, say, I don't understand what's going on. This curriculum sucks. I don't know what the situation is. You could say that you were a parent, you were frustrated because you were teaching 3 to 4 children in your home, 3 to 4 different curriculums based upon the grade level that they're on. This is a place where you could say, I'm tired. I first started with a series called Distant Learning 101, and I did it for parents, teachers, and students. And out of that free resource and advice, so I created this remote learning platform called Parent Teacher Check-In. We had 3 powerful people who were on this show as my co-hosts. One was the former principal of My 11, Principal George Patterson, who's now, as I said before, the senior director of My Brother's Keeper. And he would give educational advice. As a principal, he would say, this is what you could be doing with your child. These are the kind of lessons and curriculums that you could be putting together. We had Monique Waterman from East Flatbush Village, a dynamic sister who is all about community advocacy and community organizing. And then we had Shaka Fair. Shaka Fair is a gentleman who I would say is a Renaissance man. He is a clinical social worker. So he would give tips to parents about how to de-stress, how not to become overwhelmed, things that you can do to manage. So all of these things were things that were happening with the parent-teacher check-in. I'm proud to say we started this program 27 weeks ago, and it's still going strong. And I want to say this in closing. Something happened during our parent-teacher check-in that shifted our focus. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, riots, protests. And I realized that our parents were being, in Black and brown communities, were being stressed to the max because they had the impact of COVID and now the virus of systemic racism both beating down at them at the same time. Dr. Shungle Blake Speaks is a podcast that will feature my experiences, my history, and my opinion about what's happening in urban schools in America and schools in general. I have a almost 30-year experience working with young people and working in educational settings. I've done a lot. I have been involved with leadership in many different levels. I'm currently president of a Black educational organization that fights for the rights of Black children and serves Black educators. The layout's going to be really simple. You're going to hear sad stories, funny stories, little things that I learned along the way, funny things that students have told me, teacher situations. Of course, I'm hip hop, so I'm going to have music involved and bring on people who I admire, but also play their music so that people know about the origins of hip hop and even embrace the new, because I'm all about bringing unity and synergy. So it's going to be that kind of podcast, but the focus of the podcast is really to give my perspective and experiences. And sometimes you'll listen to it and it's going to sound like a comedy show, because these stories are just, I can't make these stories up. You'll go from funny to deep reflective introspection about who you are as an educator and what we need to do for our children. So it'll take on the element of a roller coaster ride. You will experience all these things, maybe in one episode, maybe across several episodes. It'll depend on what's happening. And of course, I'll be analyzing current news and current situations that still need to be confronted. So there will be an element of advocacy and an element of information sharing on my podcast.